Hello, everyone. What's up? And welcome back to the Capital Stack. So we have an amazing show today for our listeners. We're continuing our experienced syndicator, experienced investor series here. And our guest for today is Jim Pinciotti. And so he's a full-time, real estate professional, investor, and syndicator. Jim is the co-founder of Pintus Investment Group. And I'm sorry if I mispronounced that. But and as a GP in over 1,800 doors, so that's a lot of experience there. His professional experience includes more than 20 years in the hospitality management industry, which I find pretty exciting and interesting because one of the core distinguishing factors, in my opinion, in this industry is how well syndicators manage assets with the end user in mind, right? And so I might imagine having a background then in hospitality management would be a great asset in this business. So with that, Jim, welcome to the show. Very happy to have you here. Happy to share your story and your mission with the world. And I'll add, I really like that you support St. Jude. I support St. Jude as well. So I think that's a really cool thing. But please share your background and your story with the audience, please.
Gotcha. Now, Brandon, thank you. And truly an honor to be on your show. So thank you for this opportunity. But I want to make one correction. We do have 1,800 in LP doors, and we have a little over 500 in GP doors. So
okay, sorry.
That distinction there. But with that said, basically, I'm from Pennsylvania, so a little bit close to you. Of course, now I live down in the Tampa Bay area, but I've been down here for about 25 years. As far as like childhood and your early adulthood, that kind of stuff, grew up in the Pennsylvania, Philadelphia, Pocono region. Was one of 6 kids, grew up in a blue collar family. My dad was an entrepreneur. He had a crane business. So I worked around heavy equipment a lot when I was young. And then in the summers and that kind of stuff, between high school and college, I used to do a lot of work with builders. So it's funny how a lot of this stuff when you're young and you're like, I don't want to do that, it ends up coming full circle, and so now when we're going and looking at properties and I can see what's going on with construction and what it should cost and things like that, it really gives me a distinct advantage that I think maybe some other people don't have. But then went on to college. I was really the only one in my family that went on to college. I was the youngest. A lot of them, went into business on their own, went into the crane business. And at the end, I was in up in the Poconos, so it was more of a hospitality vacation area. So that was sort of a big business up there. So I went in, I got my hospitality management degree from East Stroudsburg University. Spent 10 years in the industry, working in hotels, and then another almost 20 years outside of the hotel business, but it was really work for a service-oriented business that stayed within the industry. So it enabled me to build a lot of really good contacts and stay connected with the hospitality industry. But at the end, we all say, what's a bigger view for us? What can we do and control our own lives and control where we want to take our lives and our directions? And as you get a little bit older into the corporate America, right, you start to see people that have left their job, or their job is no longer of the same value. So my wife and I, in 2015 and 2016, we said we got to make a change. And then we've always loved real estate. So basically, we both went out and got our real estate license while we were working full time. And then we started buying some rental properties. So we started doing rental properties, going in there, fixing them up on weekends and at nights, getting them rented. And then we started, as we saw some of these properties, we're like, I think we can fix that one. I'm like, I can do the floors. You can paint. I know how to do backsplash. So we started doing some fix and flips. And so next thing you know, in 2016, I left my job. I've been there for 20 some years. And I went full-time real estate. She stayed in her career for a little bit longer, another year. She was at Citigroup. And by middle of 2017, we were both unemployed. No, but we were we were doing real estate. We both had our licenses. We were building a rental portfolio, and then we were doing the fix and flips. And so then she was developing the residential side of the real estate. And since I was already connected with many hotel people in my territory, I would handle like Orlando up to Gainesville, over to Tampa, down to Naples. So all of West Central Florida, I had 15, 20 years of getting to know owners of hotels. So I said, I'm going to go after commercial real estate. Was able to get some listings and sell some hotels, which was great. And then by 2018, things were going good, and we're moving and we're moving and grooving. And then we went to a seminar, and Brad spoke, Brad Sumrock,
Mm-hmm.
and we're like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense, because it's hard to continue to find another good rental property or another good fix and flip that you can make it happen.
Mm-hmm.
And so, the whole idea about scaling and multifamily sort of got embedded in us. We went to one of his seminars in 2018, and we were hooked. We signed up, did the foundations.
Yep.
We invested as LPs in 5 different deals, and then as we were doing that, we got to know the different sponsors and syndicators, right? And started to build relationships and get to know them and see how they operate. Developed friendships, and then so that's sort of how we got into the GP part, and then started underwriting deals with some of them, and next thing you know, we're getting involved in GP deals. So
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Incredible. I really appreciate you sharing that story. There's a lot to dig in there. And I think that there are a few things that stand out to me. If I could just maybe pull out some themes, I guess I'll call it. One is the importance of networking, which clearly you have been able to benefit from throughout your career and your now your investing career. So super important stuff there that we'll get into. Also taking consistent action, because it's difficult for most of us, it's difficult to have that stance and to take action over a prolonged amount of time. But it's very clear to me that you have been able to do that for 15, 20 years consistently. And so, as they say, with the what is it? Discipline weighs ounces, regret weighs tons, right? So the discipline of taking consistent action over that long amount of time has clearly benefited you. So I think that's incredible. And also just the power of kind of leveraging it's a part of networking, but leveraging your network to reach a goal and reach a point. And so so I love your story. I like that you and your wife, you took inventory in 2015 to make a change. And even though you were on a good trajectory before, but you still are, but I think it's powerful to say that, hey, you stop and take inventory and say, well, we like how things have gone, but we actually want to go in this direction. What actions do we need to take in order to adjust slightly? So I just, all those things I'm a huge promoter of the abundance mindset. So I love your background. I love your story. And so I also started off on a single family side, right? And so I like to, that resonates with me a lot, because I like to, some people jump straight into multifamily, and that's a good strategy as well. But I think that when you get started on the single family side and then kind of shift and see what works and what doesn't, it can be a great way to kind of make you feel comfortable about then scaling up to the larger assets.
100%. And it's one of the things that I really appreciate from the single family side, and then the fix and flip side, is that, in the very beginning, our budgets were very small. And so we were buying the paint and the paintbrushes and painting, and we were buying the floors and installing them. But as you do all that, right, then you start to move to the next level and the next level. And we have a painting company that we've developed a relationship with. And to this day, I mean, we have a 135 unit property down in South Tampa, and we're using that guy when we're starting to fall behind on some terms. We're like, hey, we need some extra painters in there. Can you get down here? Yeah. So, that relationship worked. And then we understand the amount of time and the amount of work that it takes to get some of this stuff done. And so when we're getting quotes, we're like, that doesn't make sense, But again, just that knowledge is power. And I think when you have that hands-on experience, it's something it can never be taken away from you. It has more value. So
yeah, absolutely. I think, and that hands-on, that knowledge of exactly kind of what right looks like. I think that's a great attribute to have, right? Is when something looks right, and so it's very easy to say, okay, well that doesn't look right. I need to pick up the phone and get someone out here to correct this, or I need to change a process in order to correct this. And so I think that's very powerful. Also, you mentioned that you had exposure early on in life to this business, working with builders and being around, that this industry. And so, can you talk a bit about maybe how that's helped you get comfortable with this concept as well?
Yeah. So, I mean, being, so as you know, like within our ecosystem, for the most part, the majority of the people are out in Dallas and other areas, maybe Phoenix, but the Tampa market really was sort of untapped. So we had been approached by several people, and we ended up working with several people, but doing touring a lot of properties, and so when we're touring these properties, we're trying to give a nice round report on what we think needs to be done. And so when I can look around and I can see what the roof looks like, and what kind of upgrades may need to be done interior wise, and have confidence talking about those things. What do the stairs look like? What does the siding look like? Is this deteriorating, not deteriorating? So I really, at the end, it's like just being around that and hearing different conversations from when I was a little kid up to like where I am now, just gives me a lot of confidence in, like, when I diagnose and say, hey, look, I think this is what we're going to need. We might need to set, let's say, 100,000 for a new roof, or repaint, stuff like that. So that has really helped, I feel, definitely going forward, especially being boots on the ground here in the Tampa Bay and Central Florida area.
Yeah, absolutely. That's an incredible. I just think you add value to any team in that way. Being present, having the knowledge and local experience is huge. And let's talk about that for a minute. So, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like kind of maybe 2-3 years ago, Tampa wasn't quite as hot as it is now, and it's just an absolute an incredible market, right? And there's just a ton of transactional volume, and so talk a bit about why Tampa. What's the for you? What's the real some of the highlights of that market?
So Tampa is very unique in terms of a Florida city, right? So it has such a for sure it has travel and tourism as a piece of their basic economy, but many of the tech companies have moved here. It's just the financial companies are here, and it's a very well-rounded economy here in the Tampa Bay area. So if, like, when COVID hit and tourism all of a sudden, boom, like just went shrunk everything. Orlando, everybody was like, oh my God, Orlando, I'm glad I'm not in Orlando. But Tampa, they were still okay with. And so, of course, it's a piece of our economy, but not the driving force. So again, very well-rounded economy in terms of a variety of different businesses. The population has just, it's continuing to grow. And when, again, COVID came, people could now work, right, wherever they want. And so we had a lot of migration here. And then so you have the migration of the people, which has been fantastic. The migration of jobs has been really strong. And then, of course, Florida in general rate is no income tax. And but yeah, so and it's just a beautiful area to live, right? You have the beaches, plus you have, if you're into sports, right, you got the Bucks, you got the Lightning, you got the Rays. If you love basketball, you got Orlando. It's an hour and a half down the road. We have some really good fine arts here as well. So it just has a lot to offer, and it's not an old city. There's a lot of new construction going around. So
yeah, no, that's incredible. And I think there's a couple of things I wanted to note. One is the term that you mentioned. This is also for the listeners. So you mentioned migration, right? Net migration. I just wanted to clue in on that, because for the listeners, that's a very important. And this is whether you're a GP or an LP, obviously, but you want to know how the population growth, the net growth, because right, you always have some influx and some outflows of population, so some movement, but how much of it is net to whichever market you're focusing on. So I think that's something just to highlight there. And I also wanted to say, or just to point out, it's in a market like that, maybe what are some of the nuances of, say, a Tampa market versus one of the I forgot there's a name for some of the major MSAs, like a Miami or something like that. How is that a little bit different to where maybe it requires a different strategy from a syndication perspective?
So, so one of the things with Tampa, even though so in 2021, we had a net rental growth of 29, 30, 31%. So it was a huge rental growth, right? And the people in Tampa, are like, oh my God, it's so expensive. Rentals becoming so expensive. But when you compare to, like, let's say Miami or Orlando, or you go down to Naples, some of these other major MSAs in Florida, Tampa is still undervalued in terms of rent. So just knowing that there is still rental growth here to happen is I think a big part of what people may not understand, right? And then trying to think versus the other ones. I think we just have more of a stable, well-rounded economy than some of the other MSAs. And I do Jacksonville is a good one as well, but it's a little bit smaller. But I would say that that's really the main difference, is that we are still one of the more affordable cities here in the Florida region.
That's awesome, and that's very relevant to what the market is experiencing now. And so that's a good summary there. One thing I wanted to ask you too is that you mentioned that in your family that you were a pioneer of sorts. Right, you were the first for some things, and I like that. The reason I say this because it can be difficult to do that, to sort of say I want to go in a different direction, especially when there's an emotional tie and a familial tie and a connection to doing things one way. So maybe can you talk about what caused you to say, okay, I actually think I want to try this out and go down this different path?
Well, when I was in college, I went there. Probably in the beginning, I was involved in sports heavily. I played football, basketball, and track, and went there for football and track, and I was doing it. And then by the time the end of my sophomore year, I was running track there, and I was like, what, I'm not going to make the Olympics. Okay, so it's a lot of hard work, and I was like, should I just go out and start working, right? And I talked to my dad, and my dad said, and my dad's a guy who was one of 13 kids.
Wow.
He had a ninth grade education, and went on to build a crane business outside of Philadelphia, and took it to the Poconos and was very successful. So, but he said, Jim, he says, look, get your education. No one can ever take your education away from you. So go do that, and then make a decision if you want to get involved with the cranes later on. And so I did that, and it just opened my eyes, and I figured, let me try it. I went into was doing the hospitality, and then when I moved down to Florida, my two brothers and my dad had also moved down here as well ahead of me, and they were doing the crane business down here. And there came a time I just thought, I was really leaning to go back into it, and then I said, you know what, this opportunity came, and I said, I'm just going to go with it, and that's it. And from that point on, I went with it. And my dad even says, Jim, go. He says, it's better for you, go that way. And so just having a little bit of that reassurance as well, and then of course, having I guess the forefront to go for it. Is the next decision there. But yeah, thank you.
That's great. I certainly applaud you, and I think you're right. It's always good to have someone to say, you know what, I support you, and go ahead and move in that direction, and so that's huge as well. So let's dig into ecosystem, right? Because you mentioned that. So we're both a part of the Summerall Group, and you touched on that, and so I'd like to get your thoughts on the impact that plugging into an ecosystem has had on you, right? Because you mentioned that you wanted to scale, and that you certainly had experience in the real estate industry, but just on a different side of it. And so I'd imagine maybe getting into an ecosystem has allowed you to make the shift. So how did that help you get to where you are now?
Like you said, had the confidence in the single family space. And when the thought of buying or being involved in a 60 unit, apartment complex, let alone 135 or 200, it was like, what are you talking about? Like, this doesn't even make sense, right? So then becoming a part of that ecosystem, it still even took a little change in your mindset to say, oh my God, like when I talked to Brandon, I talked to Brent, and they're all like, yeah, I'm doing this deal, I'm doing that deal. I'm like, and then 2 years ago, they were in the same position you were, right? And so it just, proximity is power, mindset is power. And it just changed your mindset to see all these people doing this. And you're like, I can do that if they're doing it. And so
Mhm.
just being around that ecosystem that gave you the confidence, the knowledge, and then the willingness for people to share, right? That all was just so powerful that I didn't anticipate that, but that's one of the reasons why we joined, we joined it. But
Mhm.
yeah, the ecosystem really just changed our mindset and put us in contact with so many good people. It um, I will always recommend going that pattern.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, and I echo some of the same things. So, when I have a discussion with folks around getting into an ecosystem, and certainly the Sunrock group, in general, I just say the in a community, especially this type of community, can really help you in two ways. One is kind of the knowledge, and then the fear factor. So it will help you because prior to joining and prior to stepping into the space, that lack of knowledge, even some awareness is good, but having kind of a lack of knowledge on the mechanics and the workflows and the process and all this, is huge. But then the fear before getting around people like you said who are doing this, having that fear of the unknown and the fear of familiarity can stop you. But once you see that, well, wait a second, these are ordinary folks that look like you and I, and they're just closing these deals, and they're taking action, and they're getting it done. And so and those are of course kind of the maybe the immediate benefits, but I'd say that the relationship building is also huge because it can help sort of ease that factor of that unease that kind of comes with getting into something like this, right? So yeah, I agree 100% there with
Yeah,
you.
yeah, no, it really was a great decision. And the other thing, really, just to add on to that is, they one of the things that they bring up is, you need to invest in yourself, right?
Yeah.
Invest in making yourself better. And so, we all think once we graduate college or whatever highest education that you've been to, right? Well, I educated myself. My God, but we know, like, the education is so much more powerful, right? Outside
Hmm.
of these academic settings, and are so much more relevant into wealth building and financial education and just building a brighter future. Didn't really resonate until you start doing it, and you're like, oh my God, there's so much to learn. And so, anyways, yeah, I just wanted to add that piece.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I couldn't agree. Like I said, it's just to me, it's huge. Continued education. You're right that it doesn't end once you've been formally educated. It begins, and so you're right. That's a misconception. A lot of folks will get that degree, you get that piece of paper, and say, "Well, I'm good now, and I can just sail off into the sunset." And it's like, no, you need to be careful because if you get too complacent, then you'll be stagnant. So.
100%,
Um,
100%. And it's like even now we're still trying to learn more, and then I'll let you go. But and even though we've done a number of deals, I feel like I have so much more to learn. And now your thirst to go meet with people that have done more than you is exponentially. The desire is there even more.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, so let me ask you. So you're still investing in a single family, and you also have some exposure in the hotel space as well at this moment, or?
Yeah, so we my wife and I, we still have some single family rentals, and when an opportunity comes around, we'll still do a fix and flip. So we do that. As far as the hotel industry, I went out. We both went and then went to the next level. And we got our broker's license from the real estate license. So I still go after. I still am well connected within the hotel industry. So like this past February. I had a client from that I've known for years, and I represented both the seller and the buyer on a hotel sale. It was a Quality Inn here in Florida. So still work that a little bit, but I don't have any per se ownership interest in hotels. Just really working with the buyers and sellers there as well, because I have my broker's license and focused on that commercially.
Oh, okay, okay. I was curious to get so get your thoughts on conversions. I know I would say certainly for the first half of this year, there was just a lot of buzz around kind of hotel conversion to multifamily, and so I was wondering what your take on that is, and is that still a viable pathway?
You know, I'm going to say I don't know. And the reason I'm going to say that is there were several that we're starting to look at,
Hmm.
never got so deep into the underwriting, but certainly you could buy, per unit much cheaper, right, than you could buy an apartment complex. So it really was going to, I feel like if you could have picked up, like, say, like a town place suites, like a suite property, then I
Hmm.
think the conversion would definitely work. If you're picking up, let's just say, like a regular Days Inn or something there that maybe have some adjoining rooms, then you might be able to limit some of your construction part. But if they're just all small rooms, then but I think that could be a great. It looks like it's a great market. I know some of them have done it, but I just don't know. I haven't got in so much detail on the expense side.
Okay.
The full conversion.
Oh, okay. No, I appreciate that. Yeah, I was just wanted to kind of throw that out there. And real quick, because I think in the intro I probably mispronounced the name of your investment group. So can you clear it for me? I'm sorry.
So it's Pintez.
Pentes.
A lot of people say Pintez, but Pintez is Pinciotti Cortez. So my wife Rena, her last name is Cortez. So
Okay.
that's where the Pintez comes from.
I like it. That's a nice ring to it.
Yeah, good.
I wanted to give you sort of a moment here to kind of talk about the approach of the Pentes Investment Group and kind of your philosophy and your strategy in this space.
Yeah, so we've been focusing on the C class properties for the most part, but I think we're sort of shifting that more to like C plus into the Bs more so. I think we definitely like that space a little bit more. And what we have looked at is, we try to focus on the value add ones, where you go in and of course they're under market and there's a good number of units that can be renovated, or maybe they're not charging for water and sewer, and that's an opportunity. The community might be run down and there's the amenities aren't there, so we can add a playground or a dog park, or like the property we're doing right now. We're working on redoing the pool area. We've added an outdoor kitchen. We're trying to give a whole new look to the outside of the property, even though it's like a 70s and 80s look. We put a beautiful mural on it. So so that's one, right? We want to find those opportunities where we can add value and they're under marketed. And it has mainly been focused on the C to B market or class is what we've been focusing on. Area-wise, we generally have been Central Florida, West Central Florida, the Tampa Bay area, probably like, let's say, an hour and a half within the Tampa Bay area. We will go to Jacksonville, which is about 3.5 hours. We like that market as well. But that's really been the area we focused on more, because being boots on the ground, I can drive an hour, and like tomorrow we're going to the property. We're going to meet with the property management company. We're going to walk the turns, see where they're at, stuff like that. See where the exterior contractor's at, where he's, and so it just makes it easier if you can do that within an hour, hour and a half to 2 hours. So for the ones that we're boots on the ground, this area is, but we do like some other markets, but that's been our main focus.
Okay, I appreciate that, and that also has to give your investors a lot more confidence in your team, right? It's the ability to go in and to make sure that the work is getting done. So
yeah, we and when we go, we do try to take some pictures, and then again, one of the things too, like if we're seeing, like I mentioned before, turns are taking too long, or the reno's taking too long because they're using one contractor and he's getting backed up. And this year, contractors overworked and things were dragging out. And so it really helped because we were able to pull like 1 or 2 or 3 different people that we've worked with to come down and help. So I think it does, I think for sure, and having a local person on the ground gives the investors more confidence instead of having someone 500 miles away.
Yeah, absolutely. And let me ask you a question. So, because you have a deal right now that you're working on, what sorts of things should be done immediately? Once the asset is taken over, right? So, at post close, what are the kind of things that's like, okay, these are the points that we need to hit at a high level? And maybe this will kind of help the LPs who might be listening understand as well.
Yeah, so what we tried to do was, get the management company up to speed as soon as possible, right? Um, evaluate the units, see what we need to, make sure that we're on the same page with our business plan. But one of the things we tried to do right away was we wanted to change the outside look right away. We wanted to change the image. So we had hired an architect that by just adding some nice wood accents to the outside of the
Mhm.
building is going to give it a new a new look. We added like a beautiful mural on one of the walls, which was right along one of the main roads in Tampa. So there were some of the things we wanted to do right away was to change the look so our tenants knew, one, oh, the new owners are coming in. Oh, I can see they're starting to do work. And two, as people are driving by and we want new tenants, right? They're seeing a new image of the property. We changed the name, so signage was another thing that we worked on as well. So that was really what we wanted to do right away, and our property management was on board with that as well. So
Mhm.
that was probably one of the first things we tried to do.
Good, good. Yeah, that curb appeal, it goes a long way, a long way. You're right, because it's one of the things that stands out. It's like, okay, there's, like you said, the new management's taking over, and the boy, they're making some really, positive changes to this community. So, I like that. So, let me ask you, should LPs expect any immediate communication, or is that not typically not happen until later? Kind of what's you all's take on that?
So how we have done it was, once we close on the deal, we send an email out to everybody saying, "Hey, we're closed on it," and then a follow-up email would come and say, "Hey, look, this is what you would expect." So what we in some of the investments I've been in, they send out a quarterly update. On this one, our GP team elected to do a monthly update. So what
Okay.
we're doing, we do something monthly. We send out a report. Now we'll show like the previous 3 months and where we're at this month, and then so they can see an idea. They can see where the occupancy is, where the revenue is, and what that is versus pro forma. And then we give like a little summary of what we did in CapEx, where the rents are moving, stuff like that.
Okay. Okay. And so another question I have is, so at takeover, you have you going into the deal, you have a plan in terms of your rehab timing, right? So you might wait until month 4, or month 6, or what have you, to start your rehab, just to test out the market, things like that. How this is kind of a loaded question, but how soon is too soon, and then how long is maybe too long to wait to start to actually do the work? And I'd imagine maybe this depends on the level of rehab necessary, but I'm just curious to hear your side on that.
Yeah, well, so as far as rehab, I think if you're looking to do what we wanted to do in terms of the exterior, I think from, I want to say day one, but like, a week to two into it, we were trying to get our exterior contractors started. So I think, get your operations running, right? Property management. Let's focus on that, and your banking and all that stuff set up right away, right? Get that. But then I think you can start on at least on some of that stuff within that first month, if not within 2 weeks, and then you could, as far as because the market was in such demand for units, right?
Mhm.
You could wait a little bit and see how your vacant units rent out, right? And see what that natural appreciation is.
Mhm.
Um, and so, that's one thing you could do, give it a month or two there, see how do we have to put any money into the unit to get the rent bump that we need? And then maybe at the same time, maybe do one or two, right? And then see what the difference is. So
Mhm.
what we actually on this one, as there was units vacating, we were renovating, to be honest with you, as soon as we could. And then after 2 or 3 months, what we started doing was, as some came available, we're like, let's see what the classics can rent for without us doing much. And so
Mhm.
we actually got some up running right away, and then almost did it in reverse, I guess, right? And then said, hey, let's put some of these classics. Let's see how quickly we can do without putting too much money into them as well. but I think, you can test the market different ways that way.
Okay, yeah, I really appreciate that answer, and it's like I said, I really wanted to highlight that for the listeners as well, because I think it is important for passive investors, especially, to kind of understand what to expect. Because some folks expect day one to have everything done. It's like, well, it doesn't happen quite that way. To have a plan needs to be in place. And then there needs to be this give and take in terms of, like you mentioned, testing the market, see what it will bear, and then implementing your capex plan to maximize the return on the capital invested. And so, incredible answers. I appreciate that.
Gotcha. Yeah, it's a variety, but it's really that's what's interesting with this industry, right? Each property is, you think it's the same, but each one's different. And
Yeah.
each little sub-market's a little different. So you sort of have to roll with what's going on in that market.
Yeah, for sure. Well, so we're getting close to close, Jim. But I wanted to ask you, for this is kind of the actionable tip portion of the show. So there might be someone who's listening, who wants to take action, but that's hesitating or to get in the game, right? And so, what actionable tip do you think a listener could take now to maybe just get started as a passive investor, get started in real estate?
So I think what I would recommend is probably like so for me, like I would say on Facebook, or you'll find a lot of different groups that are out there, and try to see, if you want to be a passive investor in a multifamily, there's groups out there, there's Jake and Gina, there's, Rock Leaf, Brad's got his group, that kind of stuff. But, listen to some podcasts and just get educated on the whole syndication side. And then I would reach out to some of these syndicators and sit in on some webinars that there's actually an investment. And if you sit in and listen to a webinar, you're not obligated to do anything. And you can listen. And then while you're on that webinar, someone's going to ask a question, or you're going to see someone else's name, and maybe reach out to these other people that have invested that are on this webinar and have a side discussion, because at least then you can get comfortable with not feeling like someone's trying to sell you, right? And so that's what I would do, is try to get comfortable, listen to some of these podcasts, go to webinars, get familiar with it, educate yourself, and then understand that in most cases, find a good syndicator, someone that has a track record, and feel confident that your investment is going to do well. I don't know about you, Brent, but we've been very fortunate with the people we've invested with, and our properties are doing well. So.
Amazing tip. And one thing that I love about that tip is that it's all free, right? I mean, it's, because people ask me that a lot as well, is how can I get started? And I try to point them as best I can to free resources, because there are plenty of them. And I really like what you mentioned, though, with the webinars, because you get to, there's a couple things there. So one is, usually in a webinar, there's a chat space, and you can leave a note, like you said. You can kind of say, hey, my name is, Brandon, and I'm new to the space. And if anyone is willing, I just wanted to, have a 15-minute conversation just to ask you a few questions. And I'll even add that if it's a webinar presentation, a live one, then the syndicator, the sponsorship team, would probably also reach out to you. So for the listeners, that's a huge tip there as well. But you're right. I mean, it's you can watch several webinars and get very comfortable with what the state of the business is. You can understand what the equity multiples are at the moment, what the IRRs tend to be, what the cash on cash expectation, the ranges are for all of these metrics. And then that just gives you that comfort level, right? You also start to build relationships, which I think is a big piece in all this.
Yeah, and real quick on that, it sort of goes back to your one thing about taking action, right? So if somebody wants to get involved, they need to take action, and maybe even on that small of a basis, right? But take action, start to educate yourself, take notes, and then, like you said, you learn what a good IRR is, a good return, and different areas that people are liking to invest in. So, and then you get more and more comfortable when you're ready to pull the trigger.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Jim, look, I really appreciate having you on the show. Thank you. And before we close, I wanted to to ask you how people can learn more about you and get connected with you.
Gotcha. Yeah. So we do have a website, and it is www.pintes, so it's PINTES investmentgroup.com. So that's our website. So you can, if you need to get a hold of us, there's contact information there. But if you want to email me directly, it's jim@pintesinvestmentgroup.com. And then my phone number, you can send a text or you can call me. My phone number is 813-263-5650. So that's the easiest way. Yeah.
All right. So I'll include that in the show notes. All right. Well, Jim, look, thank you so much again for being on the show, and I really appreciate it.
Gotcha, Brandon. Thank you. And will I see you at aim.com?
I'll be there.
All right. Thank you. Have a good one.
You too.
Bye-bye.